Mia Parker had been anticipating this weekend for weeks. A much needed break from the daily grind, from the exhausting hours spent in courtrooms battling for justice, from the ceaseless demands of her high pressure job at a prestigious law firm. She had meticulously planned every detail, booking a charming hotel in downtown, arranging for spa treatments, and scheduling quiet evenings by herself to recharge. The world outside was demanding, but here in the city, she could escape, even if just for a couple of days. The moment she entered the hotel lobby, however, she sensed something was off. The air was thick with tension, like an invisible fog hanging in the room. It wasn't the kind of atmosphere one would expect from a five-star establishment where guests were greeted with warmth and professionalism. Instead, there was a coldness in the way the receptionist looked at her, as though assessing her not as a guest, but as an outsider. Mia straightened her back, shaking off the instinctive discomfort. She had been through tougher situations before, faced stares that were far less subtle, and she had always managed to maintain her composure. She approached the front desk, where a young woman with blonde hair tied back in a neat ponytail stood. Her face bore a strained smile, the kind that didn't quite reach the eyes. "Good evening, ma'am. How can I assist you today?" the receptionist asked, her voice laced with a hint of hesitation. Mia smiled back, her tone polite, but with a trace of exhaustion. "I'm here to check in. I have a reservation under Mia Parker." She slid her phone across the counter, showing the confirmation email along with the reservation number. The receptionist glanced at it quickly, her fingers tapping away at the keyboard. The seconds stretched into what felt like an eternity. Mia's fingers tightened around the edge of the counter, the palpable anxiety creeping in as the receptionist's face began to fall. "I'm sorry, Miss Parker, but it seems we've had a mix-up. The system shows that your reservation was canceled," the receptionist said, her voice no longer carrying the same forced politeness. "I'm afraid we don't have any rooms available for tonight." Mia's heart skipped a beat. She blinked, trying to process the words she had just heard. "I don't understand. I spoke with someone earlier this week to confirm my reservation. Everything was set. I even have the confirmation number here," Mia responded, her voice holding a trace of disbelief. The receptionist seemed to falter for a moment, typing furiously into the system, as if hoping the situation would resolve itself. Mia could see the panic flickering in her eyes, and that small seed of doubt planted itself in Mia's mind. She had done everything by the book. She had confirmed the reservation. Everything had been settled. So, why was she being turned away? The receptionist hesitated, glancing toward her manager, who had been standing behind a nearby desk. He had been watching the exchange from a distance, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable. The receptionist's gaze seemed to silently ask for guidance, and after a brief, tense pause, the manager finally made his move. He approached the desk with a stiff, businesslike demeanor, his shoes clicking sharply on the marble floor. His cold, gray eyes met Mia's for a brief moment before he addressed her with practiced indifference. "I'm terribly sorry, Miss Parker, but we simply don't have any rooms available for tonight. It appears that your reservation was canceled by our system. Unfortunately, we cannot offer you a room." Mia stood still, processing his words, the coldness of his tone sinking in deeper than she had anticipated. A mix of confusion and anger surged within her. She had seen it before, the subtle, dismissive attitudes, the way people could question her presence in places where they didn't think she belonged. But this felt different. This was not just an error in their booking system. This was personal. Her fingers dug deeper into the edge of the counter, and she took a steadying breath, trying to maintain her calm. "I don't think this is right," she said, her voice now tinged with the frustration she had been holding back. "I've been traveling for hours, and now you're telling me there's nothing you can do? Surely, you can find a solution." The manager's expression remained as unchanged as it had been from the beginning. His politeness was thin, almost mechanical, and beneath it, Mia could feel the indifference. He was looking at her not as a guest, not even as a paying customer, but as an inconvenience. "I'm afraid not, Mississippi. There's nothing I can do." You may want to try another hotel, he replied, his voice detached, barely concealing the finality of his words. Mia stared at him, momentarily frozen, as the weight of the situation hit her like a sudden wave. She was standing in the lobby of a hotel after hours of traveling, only to be turned away without an explanation. Her pulse quickened, the frustration bubbling up from deep within. She had been subjected to microaggressions before, subtle snubs, sideways glances, the quiet challenges to her competence and presence. But this was blatant. It was a refusal pure and simple, rooted in something much uglier than an error in their booking system. Mia glanced around the lobby, looking for any sign of empathy, any glimmer of decency, but all she found were the cold, indifferent faces of hotel staff, avoiding her gaze. She knew that walking away from this moment would be easy, too easy. She could leave, find another hotel, chalk it up as a misunderstanding. But that wasn't who she was. She wasn't going to let this go. Listen, she said, her voice growing steadier with each word. This is not a booking issue. This is something deeper. You cannot just refuse to honor my reservation for no reason. I'm not leaving until I get a solution. The manager's face remained impassive, his eyes betraying no sign of recognition, but Mia could feel his discomfort. He stepped back, glancing at the receptionist, who seemed to be waiting for him to decide what to do next. He turned back to Mia, his smile faltering. I'm sorry, miss, but there's nothing more I can do for you. Mia felt the anger surge within her, the urge to yell, to demand answers, but she held it in check. Instead, she stood up straight, straightened her coat, and walked toward the door. Her exit was deliberate, as though making a statement with each step. But inside, her mind was racing. There was no way she was going to let this moment pass quietly. The more she thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about a canceled reservation. This was about power, control, and exclusion. She wasn't going to let them get away with it. As she left the hotel and stepped into the chilly night air, Mia felt a cold resolve settle over her. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. She would fight this. She would make sure they knew the price of turning someone away based on something as trivial as who they were. Because Mia Parker wasn't just any woman. She was a force to be reckoned with, and she wasn't going to let this injustice slide. Not this time. Mia had barely slept that night. Her mind was in turmoil, restless as she replayed the events of the previous evening over and over. The sting of the rejection at the hotel was still fresh, the words of the manager echoing in her ears. It wasn't just the unfairness of the situation that gnawed at her, it was the realization that this was something she had faced countless times in her life: subtle exclusion, passive aggression, and the quiet discrimination that lurked just beneath the surface of social interactions. Every time she had encountered such treatment, she had swallowed her frustration, letting it fester quietly, hoping the world would change without her having to confront it head-on. But this time, something was different. She was no longer willing to let it slide. She refused to be a silent participant in the story of her own mistreatment. The truth was, Mia had worked too hard to get to where she was, too many long nights spent studying case law, too many battles fought in courtrooms, too many sacrifices made for her career, her success, and her independence. But now, in the face of this blatant injustice, she saw something clear. It was time to take control. It was time to fight back, not just for herself, but for every other person who had ever been turned away, dismissed, or made to feel inferior because of who they were. She wasn't going to let this moment fade away into the shadows of past injustices. No, this time, she would make a statement, loud and clear. By morning, Mia was already putting her plan into motion. The first thing she did was make a series of calls. Her fingers flew across her phone screen, dialing numbers she knew would help her. She reached out to an attorney she had worked with on previous cases, a sharp-minded woman who specialized in civil rights. Then, she contacted a public relations expert, someone she knew could help her craft the narrative and ensure it reached the right ears. Finally, Mia made a few calls to investors she had networked with recently, People who trusted her instincts and who had the resources to back her if the time came to make a big move. As the morning sun rose higher in the sky, Mia felt her pulse quicken. This was no longer just about proving her point, it was about reclaiming a space that had marginalized people like her for too long. She was taking this battle to a place where it would have lasting consequences, where it would matter. She was going to make this hotel hers, but she wasn't doing it out of spite or vengeance. No, she was doing it to ensure that no one, not a single person, would ever feel like they didn't belong in a place that was supposed to serve them. By noon, Mia stood once again in front of the hotel's front doors, but this time, she wasn't alone. The lobby, once so welcoming and polished, now felt like a battleground. Standing beside her was her attorney, a calm and measured presence, ready to tackle any legal hurdles. Behind them was the public relations expert, who had already begun drafting a statement that would challenge the hotel's discriminatory practices. And at the back of the group, there were two investors who were ready to turn this entire situation on its head. They were here to do more than just back Mia financially. They were here to back her vision for the future of this place. The hotel manager saw them approaching from a distance, and his eyes widened as Mia's group entered the lobby. The change in their demeanor was immediate. What was once casual and dismissive now turned to uncertainty. As they walked toward the front desk, the manager's face grew pale. Mia wasn't just some woman who had been turned away. Now, she was a force, a woman with power and purpose. She wasn't there to beg or plead. She was there to demand a change. "I'd like to speak with the owner," Mia said, her voice unwavering, as though every word she spoke carried the weight of her intention. The manager stammered for a moment, his mind racing as he tried to think of a way out of this. But there was no way out. Mia had already made up her mind. She was going to own this space, and she was going to change it one way or another. "Of course," the manager said, motioning toward a side door. "Please wait here." Moments later, a tall man in his mid-50s, sharply dressed in a dark suit, stepped into the room. He looked every bit the part of a successful business owner, his posture straight and his expression carefully neutral. Mia knew exactly who he was, the owner of the hotel, the man responsible for the decisions that had led to her mistreatment the night before. He extended his hand, but Mia didn't shake it immediately. Instead, she took a step forward, her gaze locking with his. "Miss Parker, I understand you were here last night," the man said, his voice trying to carry an air of apology, though it was tinged with unease. It was clear he hadn't expected this confrontation. "I was," Mia replied, her voice firm, with none of the hesitation that had marked her interactions with the receptionist, "and I was treated unfairly. I was denied a room based on an unjustified cancellation. But more than that, I was made to feel unwelcome because of who I am." The man's face flushed with embarrassment, his eyes darting briefly to his manager before he attempted to speak. "I'm sorry about what happened, Miss Parker. There seems to have been some kind of mix-up. We'd like to offer you a complimentary stay for your inconvenience." "I'm not here for an apology," Mia cut him off, her voice growing even firmer. "I'm here to change things. This hotel and its management has perpetuated a culture of exclusion, and I'm here to take control of that." The owner blinked, taken aback by her audacity. He opened his mouth to say something, but Mia held up a hand, silencing him. She wasn't interested in his excuses. She had already done her homework. She had already seen the numbers, understood the hotel's faltering financials, and now she was ready to make her move. Mia continued, "I've assembled a group of investors who are willing to buy this hotel, and I've already secured the necessary funds. You failed to run this place properly, and I'm here to take it off your hands. You can either sell, or we can let the legal system determine what happens next." The owner hesitated, visibly flustered by Mia's directness. He tried to play it cool, but Mia could see the cracks forming. He had never expected someone like her to walk in with a plan so well laid out, so structured. He had assumed he could simply brush her off. But Mia wasn't like the other guests who had come and gone. She wasn't someone who could be dismissed. Within hours, Mia's legal team had drawn up the necessary paperwork. The hotel owner had no choice but to agree. Mia had made her point not just by demanding a room, but by taking everything from the man who thought he could control the space with his privilege. The sale was finalized, and Mia Parker became the new owner of the hotel. As Mia stood in the lobby the next morning, she saw the same receptionist who had turned her away the night before. The woman approached cautiously, her eyes shifting nervously from the floor to Mia's face. Mia smiled warmly and said, "Good morning. Welcome to my hotel." The receptionist froze, her mouth opening but no words coming out. Mia's smile grew, and she knew then that her battle had been won. This hotel, once a symbol of exclusion, would now become a beacon of inclusion and empowerment. It would be a place where everyone, no matter their background, would be made to feel welcome. And Mia? She was just getting started. As Mia stood in the lobby, looking at the hotel she had just reclaimed, she knew this was only the beginning. She had transformed an act of injustice into a powerful statement of resilience and empowerment. The message she had sent echoed far beyond the walls of the hotel. It wasn't just about winning a battle, it was about changing the system, about standing up against the forces that sought to diminish and dismiss. Mia's journey was a testament to the power of persistence, the strength of conviction, and the relentless drive to never back down, no matter the odds. She had faced adversity and turned it into opportunity, and now she was ready to share her story with the world. If you believe in standing up for what's right, in reclaiming your power, and in making sure that no one is ever turned away because of who they are, then join us. Mia's story isn't just hers, it's everyone's story. It's a call for all of us to rise above the challenges we face, to turn our setbacks into comebacks, and to take control of our destiny. For more inspiring stories like Mia's and others that will keep you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to subscribe to Expect Stories. Join the movement. And let's make the world a place where everyone feels like they belong. Remember, this is just the beginning. The world is waiting for your story to be told. Expect Stories, empowerment through every narrative.